The Girl from the Other Side is a manga that caught my attention when I needed it the most. I'm someone who for the most part surrounds themselves with battle manga, and while this is still something I enjoy due to finding some of my most favourite pieces of fiction within this category, at times I will eventually feel like I'm getting burnt out a bit and want to try something new. But you see, that only begins the problem of what I want to read next. And this is when I decided to head to the store to see if there were any manga that caught my eye. And sure, I could have looked up online what manga series to read when bored, but that's no fun. And because of this small journey, that's when I saw it. Right in the bottom corner of a shelf was this book, revealing a cover that showed two characters that felt like complete polar opposites. One was an adult, the other was a child. One was a man, the other was a girl. One was a creature, the other appeared human. One was black, the other was white. One was tall, the other was small. And even with these differences, they're both shown walking together rather peacefully in what looked like an empty wasteland depicted via the dead trees and nothingness consuming the background. It gave off a rather classic storybook vibe, feeling almost like it was part of a fairy tale. This was everything that came to my mind when looking at the cover for this manga, and because of this amazingly strong imagery, my attention was grabbed immediately. So now that I've had the time to sink my teeth into it, I'm all the more excited to share my spoiler-free thoughts on what caught my attention the most with this manga and why you should most definitely plan to read it right now. This is the fascinating story of The Girl from the Other Side. The story follows a girl named Shiva who became abandoned by her auntie at a young age. But Shiva doesn't know she was forsaken, and so she waits every day upon the anticipated return of her auntie to come bring her back home. This little girl lives in an area called the Other Side, a place that is secluded from everyday civilization because of a rampaging curse that has swept through the land, turning humans into demonic creatures. So while humanity is thriving on one side, so are the beasts on the other. And I know exactly what you're thinking. How has such a small defenseless girl survived this long in the heart of dangerous territory? You see, that's where this guy comes in. This is Teacher, one of the exact creatures I was just talking about that people turn into as a result of the curse. However, Teacher doesn't behave as you would expect a typical monster to. He is considerate, kind, and has been taking care of Shiva ever since she was left at his feet. This man wishes to stay by her side so she doesn't fall into any sort of danger, and while this is awfully thoughtful and sweet, this motive alone creates complications. A single touch is all that's needed to transfer this curse onto a human, meaning these two characters always need to be on guard around each other to make sure an awful mistake like that doesn't happen between them. And because of this, it creates an air of loneliness. Even though they have each other's company at all times, this boundary puts up an invisible wall in the middle of them, which can make these two characters feel just as alone as they were to begin with. This is where the dialogue between these characters become all the more important to display the comforting relationship they share with one another. While if we're focusing purely on appearance, it may seem like these two would have trouble finding the right conversations that they could both be a part of. But from what I've read of this story so far, it's that one of the main themes is how looks can be awfully deceiving. Shiva and Teacher depend on each other for different things, which makes the discussions always feel like a bonding moment between a father and their own child. Shiva depends on Teacher when it comes to understanding the everyday essentials of well-mannered behavior. This includes cleaning up, collecting food, going to bed on time, and other small tasks. And while this is all pretty straightforward, simple teachings, it's something that Shiva herself depends on to keep her mind at ease on whether she's making the right decisions or not. She is only a child after all. This acknowledgement is even confirmed through the name she gave this cursed individual, this being Teacher. You would be thinking that there's not much for Teacher to learn from this child, considering he looks and behaves like a full-grown adult, creature or not. However, age doesn't fix the weaknesses that only someone else is able to patch up for you, and for Teacher, this was loneliness. Shiva being an everyday part of his life has become so common and natural up to this point that you can tell every so often there are small openings that show how almost heartbroken he is on how this may not be a lifestyle that will continue on forever. He's not outright saying this, but for this case, just an image alone is worth 1,000 words. This is one of the core elements in this tale that grabbed my attention the most in regards to how looking at this story from a surface level isn't enough. enough. But instead, as you continue turning the pages, you see a multitude of layers lifting this narrative up to us wanting to be revealed. For example, this simple layer is shown through the relationship both Shiva and teacher share. Majority of their time on the page is talking about food, being safe, and everything else I mentioned before. The words teacher responds to Shiva with also showcases this, being very short, simple, and considerate, matching what Shiva herself can manage when it comes to her own dialogue. Yet when teacher separates himself to be alone, the atmosphere grows more complex immediately, as we can see through the visuals of this page the busy state of his room. The bright white panels we were used to seeing are now covered in darkness, creating a heavy aura which helps shift the mood from almost carefree to serious. Instead of the small simple answers we would see him give to Shiva, he's now asking himself questions that only spiral on and on from one another, doubt and concern clouding his mind to where he gets so lost in thought of how truly complicated this world is that he ends up losing track of time, as this range of uncertain emotions has kept him wide awake into the early hours of the next day. This story is filled with an uneasy air of mystery, as it's one of the best core hooks that keeps you locked into this journey to unravel it all. The fear of the unknown is something that's so incredibly compelling because your mind is always trying to piece together something you can understand to grasp hold of the situation. And because of how this world has normal humans like us in it, we tend to make our thoughts and expectations gravitate to a more grounded level that we can comprehend, which is why it's all the more chilling and uncanny when we see our assumptions of what's common reality get shattered by the mere appearance of these range of different cursed entities that roam the same world as you and me. While you become interested in the secrets of this world, you also grow aware of how dangerous it gets upon digging deeper, and that's a really excellent set of conflicting emotions to hold down the reader into, as on one hand you care deeply about wanting the relationship between Shiva and teacher to remain strong and safe, yet on the other hand you want to find out more about this dark world. However, the deeper these characters go to unearthing these secrets, the more it could potentially jeopardize that family-like relationship you cared about all so much, to the point where even just a shadowy silhouette hiding in a tall never-ending forest where they practically blend into where they emerged from is enough to let the reader know, slowly but surely, this world wants to be discovered. The artwork that this manga presents also greatly helps create the perfect atmosphere for the reader to get immersed into. It's like we're looking at a gothic horror story in some ways due to how extreme the contrast of heavy black to empty white can look on the same page. And this choice of art style is so incredibly beautiful, as the mangaka Nagabe is able to pull off a diverse showing of their strengths as an artist. This could be from the thin, delicate lines that break apart to show the soft and fragile character of a little girl, to then the rough, quick pen strokes to show off the unnatural and unpredictable energy these cursed creatures carry. I also love how the environments carry the same feeling of not being super refined, fitting the landscape where these cursed ones roam, which makes it feel all the more like we're in the heart of their territory. And when we start talking about how these characters have been designed with what they are attempting to convey to the reader, we can see a great deal of thought has been put into this area. For example, Shiva is drawn in relatively simple fashion. Her face isn't detailed, her clothing isn't complex, and her entire design is filled with white apart from her eyes and boots. This choice in design fits her simplistic way of speaking any child would have, and we can see this is intentional because the way that other humans are represented is very different, filled with visible wrinkles and shadows that cover their bodies, which never happens with Shiva. Her character being almost completely white also symbolizes how she can easily be looked at as a blank canvas that could be dyed any color, which is why teacher feels it's all the more important to make sure she doesn't fall into the wrong hands. This leads into my next point in regards to teacher, as Shiva's black eyes and boots can signify her connection to the curse, which can also be seen as teacher. And so if we go over to look at his design, his body isn't exactly covered in black from head to toe. Just like Shiva, his eyes are the opposite color. This goes for parts of his clothing as well, where his arms and collar are white, to not only show the similar connection both himself and Shiva share, as I've been saying, but as well as how this man hasn't lost himself to the curse, as there's still some pureness and life within him that he plans to keep a hold of. It's clear as day that the mangaka has been awfully considerate with how they designed their characters, with the type of messages they would like to be conveyed to the reader, and I'm happy to say that this sense of careful attention has carried over into the anime too. There are two separate adaptations for this series currently out, one being a 10-minute episode while the other is just under 70 minutes. Yet what they both share is how visually stunning they look thanks to Wit Studio. From the footage I'm showing, you can tell how they really managed to capture that fairy tale aesthetic, as it looks like hand-painted pictures in a children's book come to life. And while I would love to recommend both of these adaptations if anime is just more appealing to you in general, unfortunately none of these adaptations adaptations follow the manga bar for bar when it comes to the narrative. The 10-minute episode from 2019 is its own standalone story that doesn't follow any specific manga chapter. Not to forget that it also includes no dialogue whatsoever, but it's still a great watch for when you do finish the manga as a little bonus. Meanwhile, for the most recent adaptation from this year in March, while it is a lot more faithful to the story by actually having dialogue and events that are included in the manga in comparison to the previous 10-minute shorts, it's still a bit all over the place by mixing the timeline of plot points, such as character introductions, important discussions, and revelations, which can really ruin the initial surprise and brilliance that these moments had set up in the manga, due to how it's like they're all pushed into this movie at once. So again, just like the other episode, I definitely recommend to give this one a watch after you finish the manga. And like I've been constantly expressing throughout this video, it's not like sticking to the manga is a bad thing, as I feel like I've given enough reasons on why the manga alone carries such a unique charm to it. This is a series that I'm certain is going to gain more of a following as time goes on, and so if anything about this manga has interested you at all, then please feel free to dive into this fascinating story of the girl from the other side. And with that being said, that's a wrap for this video. I have more manga that I plan on making these recommendation videos on, but this series was definitely the one that jumped out to me the most in a time when I wanted something fresh to read. So if you did enjoy anything that I talked about, then please give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can get notified when I drop my next video. It's for free and it lets me know you're enjoying my content. So if you're at least a slight bit interested, you might as well stick along for the ride. As well, do follow me over on my Twitter account at MikeyUbi. It's the place where I'm most active, so if you do want to message me over there about anything you want, then feel free. And also, please do comment below if there's anything you'd like to talk about, whether it's to do with this series or anything anime and manga related in general. Whatever the discussion is, I'll make sure to check it out. And with this, thank you all so much for watching the video to the very end. Hope you all have a great day, and bless.